Welcome, everyone. Good afternoon. I want to welcome you very much to this patient engagement open forum session on taking action and driving change, co-creating frameworks and standards for remuneration of patient-pharma interactions. This is the last in the sessions today, with an earlier one held earlier this afternoon. My name is Mark van Grieken. I hail originally from the Netherlands, but I've now lived in Scotland for more than half my life. I was diagnosed with Parkinson some 16 years ago, and I have become ever more active in the last 5 years or so in the field of research. I'm involved in a number of organizations to do with research within Parkinson's UK, but also more international with the PD Avengers and involved in some patient engagement councils. I was fortunate to obtain a place on the UPATI training course and have become a fellow of UPATI. And in this session, I represent UPATI on the project we are focused on, which is of course part of the open forum. Next slide, please. The patient engagement open forum is, as some of you will know who have already attended previous sessions of the open forum, a series of virtual and in-person events. This obviously being a virtual event. And during these, we work together in a multi-stakeholder way to achieve better and stronger patient engagement. This allows us, and we aspire to, providing a very holistic and all-encompassing approach to patient engagement, and the framework within this takes place. We want to foster collaboration, working together, and not fragmenting down in separate sections or movements. We want to conjoin patient engagement work. Of course, there's always some housekeeping rules. The standard one is keep your microphone on mute unless you are speaking. Particularly, we would like to ask you to be really present and actively engaged, because that is the real target and purpose of this meeting. You can use the chat function at any time, and we will also use facilities during the breakout sessions that you will be explained a bit later. I want to draw attention specifically briefly to the competition law notes, which we strongly recommend you try and avoid discussing any issue that may be in conflict with the competition laws that we're all subject to. Of course, as I said a minute ago, these sessions we will break out into different rooms. And in these rooms, we'll use Group Map, which is a simple way of recording observations you make. Now, I want to assure you that any observations you make in that, even if they're not detailed discussed, will be in further detail be considered by the team afterwards. You may also, of course, use the chat to say hi to each other. I've referred to this just briefly a minute ago, but please limit yourself to those topics you can freely discuss without causing issues with the relevant laws, etc. And do not formally represent anything that could be in conflict of that either. I think most of you may well be familiar with this. So briefly then, before I hand over to Nicole, a quick introduction to the other speakers. As I mentioned, we will have a number of speakers. We're starting in a minute with Nicole, who will give a product introduction, where we are and where we're going forward. There will then be 3 breakout sessions chaired by Nicole and Leroy, with Kim and Sarunas, and with Laura and myself. Nicole, I would like to hand over to you now.
Hey, thank you, Mark. Thank you for that really warm introduction. And hello, everyone. Thank you for being with us today. I'm Nicole Wicki. I'm a program manager with PFMD, leading our collaborative work on remuneration. So thanks once again for joining us. As we begin, I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge the steering committee in this project. So we've got a fantastic steering committee driving forward the work, and a great dedication, knowledge, and experience that they bring deserves a mention today. And also a thank you to all of you from the broader patient engagement community. You all contribute through our series of patient engagement open forum sessions and through public consultations. And so thank you so much, and thanks for being here today. So I want to take a moment to anchor our work, both for today and also within this remuneration and fair market value project as a whole. So within this project, the challenge is not only to do the right thing in terms of fair remuneration for patient engagement, but also to do it the right way. So when we look at patient engagement over the past decade or even half decade, there's an increasing demand, there's progress that's been made to make systematic engagement a reality. And for the continued expansion of patient engagement, we need it to be sustainable. So particularly for patients and patient organizations to bring the relevant resources and capacity accordingly. So when it comes to fair remuneration for patient engagement, it's a matter of payment that matches the contribution. So this is doing the right thing. To meet this approach, we need to be mindful of the heightened sensitivities around remuneration, particularly when we're talking about interactions with pharmaceutical companies. So in terms of doing it right, we have to really co-create the right and transparent methodology for how we can define what we mean when we say fair remuneration. On the next slide, just this slide here just gives a brief recap of this project, what we've set out to accomplish. So what we've really set out to do here is to bring a global lens to remuneration of patients for interactions with pharmaceutical companies. So the rationale behind this is clear. We want to increase transparency and fairness of current practices. We want to address the need for commonly agreed global practices and to drive change. And we can achieve this by harmonizing previous collaborative work to develop overarching global principles, a global methodology that's grounded in concrete frameworks, and bringing this guidance to life and operationalizing it through practical and digital tools. So by co-creating this work together and engaging with you and our networks regularly as we progress the work, we can drive consensus and bring objectivity to a really highly subjective area. So, and also to note that the overall approach has been to ground this global effort in pre-existing work. So I want to take some time for special acknowledgement to the organizations on the bottom of your screen that have really forged the path and set the foundation for us to harmonize and scale up work in this area. Next slide. So to update you on the status of the project, you'll recall from our last special session in February on the fair market value fundamentals that the global principles have been consolidated after an extensive public consultation, and they've been launched. So Sarunas will speak to the principles a little later in the session today. Currently, the project is focused on co-creating a global methodology. I'll get a little bit more into the details on the next slide, but I also wanted to know a few key things about this work. So first, that the scope here is with respect to interactions between pharmaceutical companies and the patient community. We realize that there's needs to extend this into other types of interactions. And this is also something that we've observed from you guys through discussions in the chat, and we're well aware, and this is something that will be a continuity of this work. But what we really want to deliver together intends to be commonly agreed guidance, not something that's prescriptive, but rather that provides a blueprint for implementation and integration in codes of conduct, in procedures, in policies, different internal realities. So the methodology in particular will be built around frameworks that are in line with the global principles, and we can bring this work to life in a practical way with digital tools. So naturally, this work is, without saying, sensitive to competition law. And so we're proceeding with the utmost respect for those parameters. So above all, this work really intends to be actionable and to drive change, creating the right conditions for fair remuneration and providing tools to advocate for yourself, and for others, for the right implementation in your respective organizations. Next slide. So as we shift our work towards the global methodology, we're grounding the development of a standard approach according to the global principles. So I've copied there the most relevant element for what we're going to be talking about today when it comes to the methodology. So in addition to other factors, the principles under fair remuneration state that payments should consider the complexity of the task or activity and the expertise that's required. So therefore, what's really needed is to co-create standard frameworks that outline activities and expertise based on commonly agreed criteria that can be used to define the value and contribution to an activity. And this can ultimately be used to inform the application of fair market value rates. So for today, we're going to be doing a bit of a workshop session. And so it's a real question of where should we be focusing our co-creation today? So there's a lot of different factors that come into play when creating a methodology for fair remuneration. So on the last slide, you noticed how this is linked and defined in the principles. A key difference in FMV rates and remuneration of patients is that we need to look at the engagement itself with fairness in mind. Defining an activity alone, say a focus group or an interview, doesn't really provide enough detail to define the value. Same with participant type alone. You can say a caregiver or patient advocate or a patient expert. This is more about who you are, not necessarily what you're doing and the value of that engagement. So to really define value and contribution, expertise is a really key differentiating factor. And this criteria needs to be commonly agreed, also balancing specificity with flexibility. So this expertise piece is going to be a cornerstone and therefore is our focus for today. So we're going to be breaking into some breakout groups and I'll talk you through this activity. Now bear with us today. You'll notice today we're using Zoom meetings instead of Zoom webinars so we can really make use of breakout rooms. So on the next slide, you'll see that we've got 3 different activity examples. So the group discussion today will be in the format of a World Cafe. So we'll be discussing 3 different patient engagement activity examples in smaller groups. So you'll shortly be divided into 3 breakout groups and our technical team will make that happen for you automatically. You'll remain in your breakouts for the duration of the entire group work. This will be for a total of 60 minutes. So in your group, you'll have the opportunity to discuss 3 different patient engagement activity examples in order to brainstorm on what expertise, what competencies, what capabilities or qualifications are ideal for such an activity. And our moderators will be moving incrementally across the 3 breakout rooms, working with each of you on each of the 3 examples. So to begin the exercise, you'll have 20 minutes to discuss your first example. And after that, 2 moderators will join your room and you'll work on the second activity together and then on the third. So 20 minutes per activity and different moderators joining you guys along the way. You'll be continuously building on the discussion and the contribution from the previous group. So don't worry about any technical details. Our team will be accompanying you. We've got technical support in the wings here today. So we'll move you to the breakout rooms shortly and stay there for the entire duration. And you'll have further instructions once you get there as well. And as Mark said, we've got some great help today in the breakout rooms from the project steering committee and the PFMD team. So activity 1 will be moderated by Laura from the PFMD team and Mark from UPATI. Activity 2 will be with myself and Lidovai from the PFMD team. Activity 3 with Sarunas from Youth Cancer Europe and Kim Taylor from the Gilead compliance team. And then of course, a handful of other Synergist team support that'll be there to help with some technical aspects and moderating our group map, which actually is on our next slide. So one final note before we move to the breakouts is that we'll be using group map for this activity. For those of you that have joined patient engagement open forum sessions before, you'll be familiar with this tool. Once you arrive in your breakout room, you'll receive your link for the group map. It'll be posted in the chat. You just need to click it, enter your email address, and then you'll have access to the map. You'll get further instructions on how to use Group Map once you reach a breakout room. If you have any technical problems at all, let us know. We're really here to support you. So I hope you guys will enjoy this activity. Matt will be splitting us into our breakout rooms shortly, and we'll see you guys back here in the plenary in 60 minutes.
Well, welcome back, everyone. I hope you're all back with us in the central plenary session. This session, I think I better start again. Welcome back. I hope you enjoyed your session. Thank you very much for your very valuable contribution. Rest assured that if we haven't talked about one of the suggestions, that they will all be further discussed and evaluated in great detail. And I would like now to hand you back to Nicole and Serenus.
Mark, over to you, Serenus. This is all yours.
Okay, thank you, Nicole. So by now, I think all of you recognize me, who was part of the moderating in these breakout sessions. Let me briefly recap how will we be using your inputs. So thank you for all your time and efforts for helping us to improve our frameworks. So now in the slide, you see actually the pipeline, what will happen. So first off, we will share you the recap of the session today, including the high-level summary of the inputs. You'll get that by email. Then we will work on this offline, trying to incorporate and look not just what you said, but into the comments and compare what was must-have expertise versus nice-to-have expertise. And then we will present it to the steering committee. Nicole was showing you before the composition of the steering committee. So again, it's balanced. You have half patient community representatives here, half of the industry. And then we will try to align and integrate these insights that you provide to us today on these specific examples that we would build into the expertise framework. And together with an activity framework, which again is something that was discussed in the previous sessions, there will be a public consultation somewhere around end of spring, so mid-May, and that will go on into the summer. For you to participate, similar if you were part of the global principles public consultation, so it will work similarly. We will try to ask you what we when we send you to review the frameworks, do you think it's clear, it's useful, is something missing, what could be improved? So then you will be able to see the full picture, not just some specific examples and trying to say, okay, where do we start from? And after doing that, we will try to create a global methodology which would tie in all of these elements all together. So we have a global principles, which is a foundation, how interaction should happen. The global principles say that the participant should be remunerated based on their activity and expertise required for the specific task, taking into the consideration the time required. So then we will be able to build that methodology because we'll have all of the domains that are crucial for that. And that's how we will be able to come up with a final formula that you would understand, okay, how this ends up to the remuneration which is being paid to the patient community. And this methodology will come back to you again to be tested in a similar way. Maybe we'll think if we can think of these interactive approaches that our team really likes into the October edition of Patient Engagement Open Forum. And then we will go by announcing into the next public consultation on all of the pieces. So the next consultation, again, coming of the May, will be just on activity and expertise framework, part of the work what you spend your intellectual power with us today to generate these great outputs. But then we'll have a full methodology. And then towards the beginning of the next year, we'll think how we can launch strong. But in the meantime, we will work on the digital tools, how to make this not just something in paper and you would need to come up, what do I do with this? But by trying to show you press this button, you get this answer. That's all of what we really want to see. Next slide, please. This is the recap of the global principles. You see the link there, pmsu.org/FME, fair market value. And there you see in one pager being said, if you print it, it's on both sides, but it's one page. So it's one pager. But that is intentional for you to have a real understanding what the global principles are all about just by looking into it, because they are already live, meaning they are official, they are final. That means they should be used. So if you knew about them before, now it's time to show them to someone else. If you didn't know about them before, now it's time to read what they are all about and put that to use. So if you are coming from a patient community, you should understand that if you are speaking next time with a big industry company in pharma, they must have heard of these principles. They know at least a bit of it. So you can say, I want this to be incorporated in my next agreement. Are you doing so or not? If you will not ask, you will not get it. I'm a patient advocate. I've been through this a number of times before. You need to fight for this, but then everyone becomes very happy by having a better way of working with each other. So if you're coming from industry and you are responsible, for instance, for patient engagement function, send this infographic to your colleagues so they would understand why this matters and why it would help to make their work easier next time when they think about the activity where you need to or you want to, but actually you should co-create all of the things you do with the patient community. So that's what has some specific things how you could use it. We need them to be adopted and used, and in order to do so, we need a critical mass to be speaking about those principles. These, the global principles, I think, was in a terrific example of a co-creation where we have a bunch of patient organizations at national, regional level from different regions, umbrella organizations to contribute to the draft. We had an industry partners contribute. We had industry associations to contribute to that, and that is built on what has already been created, updated, and harmonizing what was all scattered all around the place in one document. So I'm biased in this because I was the guy drafting them together with the team, but we are proud of our work. Look at them and think if you are proud to use them as well. So back to you, Nicole.
Great. I just have one thing to note before I hand over to Mark to close the session out. And thanks, Arunas, for that really impassioned call to action around the global principles. It's just that we do have this great two-sided one-pager for you and the global principles. And we will, as Sarunas mentioned, have an article reporting and feeding back on our session from today. And so for all of you to know, because I'm sure a lot of you will be signing off for your Easter weekend, we will send a follow-up email and include all of these things in there for you so you have it all in one place. So by attending today, you're on that list to receive that information. So thanks a lot for your time today. And Mark, I'll hand it over to you to close the session.
Thank you. Thank you all for joining us today, especially so late in the afternoon before we hopefully all have a nice break. For me, not everything went right because I was totally familiar with some of the things, but that's what patient involvement is about. And that's I want to turn positive on its head. Very importantly, there may be things that you haven't had a chance to say that you would want to elaborate on. Please send us an email, reach out to us. We'll be very open to that. The steering group and the team will be delighted to look at it. I also wanted to ask on behalf of everyone if you would be willing to complete this survey, the questions, the feedback, give us feedback on the session. Please don't forget to do that. I think it was a very interesting session. I think there was quite a lot of really positive support of the key points that may influence the next step. There was reasonable clarity and direction on that as far as the group that Laura and myself participated in. Thank you very much for that. And thank you very much to all of you contributed, to the technical team behind this, and to the steering committee for your continued co-creation and support. Thank you very much and have a fantastic evening, and see you soon next time.
Thank you very much.
Bye. Thank you. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.